Good evening. Yesterday and today were so beautiful. It was so beautiful outside. Spring. I've been so focused on my own work that winter just kind of came and went. It was a mild winter. And spring is just, it's that new promise of something new and refreshing in a sense, right? And it made me think too about the human spirit and how much we can tolerate to survive, even when our lives weren't just meant to survive, they were meant to thrive and to enjoy. And when you're put into a situation where you aren't allowed to thrive, but you are just surviving, I think that because of the illness that I was diagnosed with, surviving for me became, kind of a blessing every day, because I could wake up and I was still alive, and, God hadn't chosen to take me. And there'd been several times along the way too that I'd asked, why am I still here? I mean, they told me, more than one doctor told me, well, people can, of course, there's always that one that might be different, but they said about 3 to 5 years that, is a statistic for metastatic breast cancer to kill someone, right? And so that's what everybody was counting on, was that I was going to fade away and everybody could just do what they wanted to do. But can you imagine, okay, let's think about this. If I had died, I still have children here. And if they had painted this really gross idea of who I was for my own children's posterity, even if I were gone, just the damages, I would feel bad for them. Well, no, not really bad for them, but it would just be like, I'm glad I'm not you kind of a feeling. Because, now, no matter what happens, they have to live with the gravity. I mean, like, we're talking gravity. So to have to carry every day what they did to a person, and how deeply vile they were willing to go to do their little evil plan. And a lot of these people, were religious. They loved God. They respected that, but they lost sight of him to the point of utterly twisting, and just I can't even imagine that kind of evil. And I am so glad that I can't imagine that kind of evil. I'm still grateful that I can't go that deep and dark. I would never suppose that I was so much better than another person, that I would put cameras on them behind their back and watch them undress, watch them in their private moments, embellish that. Or to be a husband that would secretly record his spouse while they were having, intimacy. Can you imagine being married to somebody that was sneaking a camera on you while you were, doing bebop? Or or anything. Can you imagine having a husband that would do something like that? Oh, and then go as far as to sell it to people and make them think that their ex-wife, well, obviously if somebody's going to be the kind of person that's going to do that to a spouse, it was probably a very good idea, even just for that reason alone, to have left. I did make mistake. There was a mistake I made though, because I caught several tapes of a bunch of different other women too. His other ex-wife, he had tapes of her and them together. He had tapes of the secretary, I think her name is Debbie or something like that. He had audio sex tapes of these people and a few others. And I'd caught these audio sex tapes, right? And I caught one, and when I knew when he was locking himself in the office, right? And I knew what he was doing in there, listening to those tapes. Didn't take a lot to to figure that out, right? So anyway, so I took, so I knew that he was taking things from me and from my boys, which, by the way, my boys are not, I don't have any kids with my ex-husband at all. Oh, thank God. And, but when he was gone, I mean, things would just disappear around the house. Personal belongings, If the boys would leave a book on the coffee table, he would snatch it and he would go lock it in his office. Well, we started losing a lot of stuff because he would steal things from us and put them in his office and lock it. Well, I mean, we got sick and tired of that, right? And so he had already put an audio, he had one of those micro mini tape machines, right? And you put the little cassettes in there. And attorneys use those so that when they're, in with the client, they can, kind of record the case, and then they can go back and take notes and remember what the case was about. Well, he had tried that with me, and that's how I found out about the tapes and taping. So, and he'd put them under a pillow, right? And, I won't go into graphic detail, but he liked, to talk about men. He wanted someone to talk about men, which was a big red flag. It was very disturbing for me because, I'm still very straight when it comes to that kind of, I'm a straight person. And so it was really interesting. And then, he had little excuses here and there of why that's what he wanted to do. But when he recorded me, I think it was my skull split. And I was just really freaked out. And that time, I thought it was over. And then, but again, I think we as women, we're too forgiving. We're too forgiving of these men. I mean, it took me a long time, and I think it was, when you're raised in, with people that are toxic, when you grow up in a toxic family, you tend to become a lot more forgiving of people than you really should. And forgiveness is it's two different things. I mean, I think my whole life set me up for some really awful experiences because of the lack of boundaries in the home when I was growing up. There was just not the boundaries that children really need to have good, strong self-esteem, to know there's certain people don't go too far. If they behave that way, you get out really quick, right? And I had a father too that he was kind of he was a womanizer, and so he was an attractive man, and so but he was not really, he wasn't faithful to my mom. I guess she's my mom. I don't know who's my mom. Anyway, they raised me. They might not be my parents. I don't know. But anyway, but he was not faithful, and he kind of took pride in his machismo, and that was just kind of his signature. And he was just the music and the scientist thing. So, but he was probably one of the reasons why there was always these lines that you could waffle. Okay, well, be a forgiving person. You want to forgive this person, people make mistakes, blah, blah, blah. You're not perfect. All the little things they say. You're not perfect. You're a sinner, and if, so, you're obligated, to keep trying. Well, with my marriage, my last marriage, though, and the reason, to be honest with you, the reason why I haven't married again is because, it just got to be where there was just no way to keep allowing these kind of men that I kept attracting somehow into my life. I don't know. I just attract them like flies on shit. Excuse my French, but that's true. And so, why? That's the big question, right? And so I'm just, I got to where, I just didn't want to do it again. But I have to tell you, when I found out that there was an audio tape, not an audio tape, but an actual videotape, and then that he would go so far as to sell it, man, I'm glad I left that guy. And that is real. That is a big red flag, ladies. You have to accept it. You know, you can point your fingers at me and say, oh, well, she's bad, or she's this, that, and the other. But can you imagine having a husband that would do something like that? That's what he did to me, right? And then, you know, and I don't want to really spend all that much time just on his situation, because, you know, there's some things going on there, you know, besides the bisexual thing, and I don't mind saying it. You know, it's just, it's not, I'm just telling you what I was enduring when I was with him. Real things that he did. Yeah. And yet, and yet he felt like he had the nerve to come after me, knowing what he was really like, and what he really, knowing what he was really like. You know, and the cheating and stealing and using, and he didn't support me. I supported him. I worked and I supported him. He was an attorney, but he didn't really take cases, you know. He was just, because he was afraid that his first wife would get more alimony if he actually made any money. And so instead of really working, so he avoided alimony to the first wife, Doreen, I think her name is, because he didn't want to pay her. So he would let me support him at my jobs, right? That was the plan. Well, he worked over at Sundance for minimum wage. That was the whole, that's how he had it all set up. You know, and then, you know, when he had the tumor, our marriage was, I mean, it was just so over anyway. And he was so abusive to my boys. I mean, you know, they would come home from school. He'd lock them out of the house. They couldn't come in and rest or get a snack or do their homework, and he would lock them outside. Then they had to go to a neighbor, call me on the phone, and I'd have to come home from work just to let them in. And it just, I mean, it was just one thing after another. And of course, the way he talked about me to his family, you know, even if he hadn't, you know, they had just had this attitude, you know, where they were snarky, and I was nice. They weren't as nice as me. And of course, you know, whatever. They didn't like me. I didn't care. I didn't like them either. I liked his mother, though. I did. But it's really interesting how much we were willing to endure. How much I have had to endure. You know, with an ex like this, other exes too, that I had another one that cheated. That was interesting. Yeah, he brought someone home. He was a bartender part-time, and he brought home his waitress that served his drinks. I had just had our baby, and she had been in ICU, and we just barely got to have her home. And we'd had an argument, and I didn't come home right away. I went over to a friend's house, and I've got this feeling, go home, and I heard it loud, go home. So I got the baby. No, actually, I was at a friend's, and she kept the baby. So I drove home, walked in the house, back into the house toward the bedroom, and the waitress left the master bedroom, no clothes on, ran over to the other bedroom and covers herself in baby's clothes, her naked body in baby's clothes. So my ex, you know, that time, you know, was cheating too. So, but anyway, you know, marriage has not been good to me. I mean, I got married to get out of the house when I was, you know, 18 years old. It was, I had been in a band. We traveled, you know, that was the, you know, even though I was really young and I was, you know, 17 traveling with men, that was really, oh man, that was, you know, a time where I was really growing as an artist too. I was writing songs already. I was already performing in front of people. It was just the most natural thing for me to do. I was in high school. It made high school really tough for me because, you know, I was on the road with these guys, and you know, I actually loved that experience. I learned quite a lot from that. I did, but I also had severe abuse going on at home. You know, one time I was, one time when I came back from a gig. I was sleeping on the couch because my sister Julie, she had taken my bedroom because I was on the road on the weekends and then come back to school, and then we'd have, band practices or things like that, and then we'd go on the road again. And so I was pretty much sleeping on the couch until I had left home. And so I was sleeping on the couch, and I just had like a t-shirt, underwear on, I was on the couch. And my dad came in and he woke me up and he was like screaming at me. And I didn't understand, why he would be screaming at me. But he was saying, you never do the dishes, you never do anything around here, which you wake me up in the morning and start yelling because I'm never home enough to do the dishes, and I'm traveling, I'm doing these things, I'm in high school, trying to be in high school, kind of, sort of, but it turned out, that he grabbed me by the throat. And it wasn't that he was going to try to strangle me. He was grabbing my throat to rip my throat out. He was trying to pull it out. To really, because like he was trying to yank my singing voice. Like he wanted to yank my singing voice out of me. My dad was an alcoholic, and I know that there was a lot of jealousy because I was doing what he loved to do with the music, and he was extremely talented. And so even though it was my mom that came in and she was saying, George, you're gonna kill her, stop, and I hadn't done anything. I was still kind of asleep when he attacked me. And I told myself, I made excuses for him because, I realized that he wanted to be on the road singing. I felt bad for him, And then another time when I had gone and made a demo tape. And I was proud of it. And I was letting my dad listen to the demo tape. And he goes, well, don't let Victoria see it. Don't let your sister see it. It'll just make her feel bad. It's like, what? So no matter where I went or what I did, there was never any validation. It was always about jealousy. It was never about, pushing my talents or being proud of me. It was like, well, don't do that. You're going to make her feel bad, or I'm going to rip your throat out. You know what I mean? Just really nonsense. So much nonsense growing up. That it stands to reason why that, when I started, my friends and boyfriend at the time would help me escape, the home situation. And then, the church thing too. It was it was still a branch at the time in Aiken, and so they weren't really a full ward yet. It was kind of the church was still at an odd stage. But I tell you these things because maybe it helps to understand, some of and it usually was my mother who was the most physically abusive. She was the most physically abusive. All my whole life. and I don't tell you this to just expose them like, pour me away. I mean, well, kind of pour me, because it was really a dire situation, okay? And it explains why, there was, over tolerance of these certain type of men that would just, come into my life, and not really having the normal education to know how to deal with these narcissists and these toxic men that would come around, right? When you're raised like that, you honestly don't really know better. You just think, I don't know what you think. And then, but you know what, and the other screwy thing about that too is, and maybe some of you can relate to me, is that if you're raised in an environment like that, then all of a sudden the guys that are normal, they seem boring. Why is that? Isn't that odd? Normal guys normal decent men should not be boring. Why do we want these guys that are just going to wreak havoc and hell in our lives? Well, I am so grateful that, I mean, it took almost my whole life, to figure all this stuff out. But I would always ask myself, and I would go to counseling after my mom and all the abuse I went through. I went to counselors most of my adult life, because I wanted to be a good mother to my children. I really did try. And most of it was I had to raise them by myself. But I was still attracting these men that kind of resembled my parents, like my dad, They were just, they were just a little bit more promiscuous than they should have been. And so, but children learn where they live, right? And I kept wondering, why is it that I keep attracting these kind of guys? These guys that, are waffling their boundaries, that they mislead and lie to you and tell you things that aren't true, like, I'm separated or I'm getting a divorce, and you know what I mean? Letting you think that they're free and, interested. So women, single women too, you're out there and you're trying to navigate what's true and what's false. And believe me, I'm not saying that women are innocent, but I think more times than not, they go with the flow of what the man is trying to orchestrate, truthfully. Now, I'm not trying to just point fingers at one gender, okay? But if you were to look at the statistics of this sort of behavior, it would typically come from the man, especially if you're kind of woman that was raised, in an environment like mine, where the woman was, lesser than the man, and the way that my dad would treat Myrna was, she was basically his slave. She cooked, well, we cleaned, she never cleaned, but we always the kids had to do all the cleaning, but she did cook. She was a very good cook, and so she literally was his handmaiden, and he was, the man of the house. It was truly the nuclear thing to, and so it was, I don't know. You could see how the situation for me was molded. I didn't know anything that these people weren't both my parents. I had no idea. I didn't know anything. I knew that I was different than my siblings. A lot of things about me was different than them. And I tried my best to stay away as much as I could. But now, as I fast forward, I really didn't, even before I made the big announcement, or not really a big announcement, even before I said, okay, I'm done with you people. It was after I had told them about the Star Maker, like if they were going to listen to what I was saying, fine, I'm just not going to, because I'd already knew a lot. And I knew that they weren't listening to me when I was telling them about, being hacked and having these people from Star Maker come over. And I can't remember exactly what, I could probably go back and find the conversation, but I warned them, that I was being, stalked by these people from Star Maker, because I knew that I had a lawsuit against them. I knew, because of the abuse that I was receiving over there, okay? And I knew that something was going on and that I couldn't get all the information. It was just weird things that were going on Facebook. It was odd. My Facebook account was not behaving normally, and I would write and say, something's going on. And then I'd see my sister, Victoria, unfriend herself, and then I would literally see her come back on Facebook and friend herself. I could see her interacting on my Facebook account when I'm just sitting there watching it. And I had blocked these people. They came in, my family came back in, unblocked themselves on Facebook. So I knew that they had some hacking going on there, and my phone was already hacked, as you well know. And then I was saying Tony Robbins on my feed, my constant clients, constantly, and I went to this, mastermind thing, and I don't personally like to go to these mass group functions where everybody's excited and you get there together and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, and even now I look at these different people that have these great big seminars and everybody's there, and I've gone to seminars before in Las Vegas and all that for different companies and stuff, and there's this overwhelming feeling of you got to buy something. Everybody's so excited and we're all synergistically together. Kumbaya, we're doing great, and we're just, love and, God, and we all, you know what I mean? It was just like, you kind of get swept up in the pomp and circumstance, and you jump into things, and then later on, you find out that, well, that was the biggest mistake of all time. One time I went to a meeting in Vegas and, got into this program that was really expensive. And it wasn't even a year later, the company went bankrupt, It's just like, so I just, anytime that there's like this group seminar thing going on, I don't really like it because it doesn't give you time to really think about what you're doing. So anyway, that was going on. And then I was getting a lot of downloads about Star Maker and about YouTube. I knew some things were going on there. I was watching what was going on Facebook. And I'm like keeping track of everything. And I'm getting downloads. I know, what's going on. And I never really looked at tarot at all until this one day. I can't remember her name at the moment. One of the readers said, Marcella wants to talk to you. I flipped on and she went, Marcella wants to talk to you. And I'm like, your grandmother, Marcella, wants to talk to you. She said that. And I'm like, okay. Unless somebody planned that, I don't really know how that could have happened. And so I stopped and I was listening to her, and the reader was telling me, you need to pay attention to what's going on around you. People are trying to steal from you. And I'm like, okay. But some of the things that she was saying was, because I already knew a lot of things that was going on because of all the time that I'd spent investigating on the music app. But when she said this, it stopped me, and I am, after her read and told me that, you need to, protect yourself. You are under attack, and your grandmother Marcella wants to talk to you. So anyway, after I was done listening to her, I'm like, I sit in bed and I'm going like, grandmother, because Marcella actually came to me when she died. I was in Oregon and she was still in Salt Lake City. But so I had no reason not to believe that because, being who I am, those experiences have happened to me. And she came to me after she died, and I was going through a hard time then too, because I had 4 children and by myself, and my boys were really little. But so I wasn't surprised by that. And so I was really listening, and I was talking to her, and like, what's going on? And the hair raises on your arm, and when they're near you, you can tell. You can even tell when they touch your skin, like when the energy, you can feel it in your hair. It just kind of prickles up. But it wasn't fear. And George was there too. Because I had been talking to. Actually, George showed up when I was still in Star Maker at that time too, when I was first listening to tarot, the first person I heard. And I had just posted God's Gonna Cut You Down by Johnny Cash. Sooner or later, God will cut you down. And my dad loved Johnny Cash. He sang so many Johnny Cash songs. Loved Johnny Cash, right? And my mom and dad would sing Ghost Riders in the sky. And I was bragging about George on Star Maker. I was bragging about my dad. What did I know? I didn't know that he was against me. I knew that he wasn't very supportive, but I didn't think that he was gonna, tell my sisters, my siblings to attack me. I never thought that they would do something like that. And they're religious. You think, in fact, I even asked my sister, wait a minute. These people are Luciferians. I thought we served the same God. And she was being very cryptic. I didn't know about Vicky from Mississippi until I guess it's been over a year ago now, that she said, oh, by the way, we have a half-sister named Vicky from Mississippi. I wonder how long they knew that. They never told me that. And so there is a lot of things going down that they were not telling me. And so I'm picking up on all this stuff. And then the beautiful reader Astrea, I'm not sure how to say it, Straya, and it was the first time I'd ever heard her. And she says, your brother's getting ready to sign something, a contract. And he's saying, he's feeling bad because he's thinking it's going to be the loss of your sweet dreams. He's signing papers with people. He doesn't feel like he really has control of the situation anymore. And he is ready to sign papers. And when she said this to me, I saw him do it. I saw him do it. And you get this feeling, it just overwhelming all over your body. And you see what's going on. There's, okay, we're not really talking. And, there was a wedge between Jason and I a bit there because of some things that happened when I lived with them when I was going through radiation. Well, actually, I was done with radiation, but I was getting a lot of surgeries done, and I was staying at their house. And so I was kind of trying to recover from the chemo radiation thing, and they weren't exactly friendly. It was really hard being around them at their house. But anyway, we had some, a wedge between us. But when Australia was talking about him signing this contract, it I knew. And so and there was a group chat, like in Messenger, there was like this general chat. It seemed like everybody was on this general chat for a while, and I go in there because I'm getting these little messages here and there, somebody's stealing from you, they think you're dead, blah, blah, blah. And so I went in there to say, Judge, I'm alive. Judge, I'm alive. If you look at some of my posts and that I've done on YouTube and on Facebook, I'm here, I'm Treva, I'm here, I'm still alive. It was just really odd how I had been ostracized from, like, what's going on? You know what I mean? You just knew. And so, and it was funny too, because I was so, knowing these people from Star Maker, what they were like, I was bawling my eyes out because I knew in my heart that they could kill my brother. Okay, and at that time, I didn't know he hated me, I didn't know he would do anything like this to me. And I was just like, and even if I had, I think I spent a whole month crying about that, but I sent him on Messenger a picture of it, hands in a jail cell. Don't do it. I just said, don't do it. These people are really evil. I warned him, like, these people are evil. Don't do it. Don't go along with it. But the rest of the story. Of course, they were already very involved. And then, this mastermind thing came along, and Glenna, my cousin, is in San Diego. And so I'm imagining that either between Star Maker and maybe her hiring Tony or offering him, some of this generational wealth of mine to come in and to just kind of wipe me out, right? Because I was supposed to die, and here I am still alive. And, they were busy taking out life insurance policies, just waiting. Maybe tomorrow she'll be dead, right? Do you realize the crime here, people? They're waiting for me to die because there's life insurance policies, inheritance, and they just know she's going to kick at the bucket at any moment now. Okay? And so, we had this, when Doug was still alive, before Doug, my cousin, I was really close to him, and he was just a wonderful fan, a great fan. Always would come on Thursday nights to hear me sing at Club 90. Always there. Oh, I can't remember. I lost my point there for a second. Anyway, I knew. So, I knew I was picking up, because I was still on Star Maker. I was still picking up a little bit. I was weaning myself off that. But I knew somebody else was coming in. somebody, you know, and when I did this mastermind thing, I remember saying something like, they were talking about, you know, how something about fast food or comfort food, and I'm like, you know what's really good about comfort food, Tony? And anyway, it's comforting. I just, you know, I mean, it was just, you know, I really, really admired him. It's like my whole life I admired this guy, and you know, I totally bought into just everything he said, and I remember even when I was married, I had some tapes of his, you know, and I would listen to them over and over again, because Kent would tell me, you've been married too many times, nobody's ever going to want you again, you can't leave me, no one's ever going to want you ever again, and so, you know, and there was a time where I was listening to Tony Robbins tapes, and I was really building myself up, and just like saying, you know, because I was positioning myself to finally, I really wanted to leave then. I should have left, because when I found a whole, you know, case of these sex tapes, audio tapes, okay, that like a fool, I helped him get expunged from the police department. I took to Vicky from Treva Police, but anyway, I had taken these tapes because I unlocked that office door. I had a locksmith come and unlocked it. Found the tapes, what he was doing in there. Got some things out of the office that he had been stealing from me and the boys. And so I took the tapes and I went down to the Provo River, and I dug a hole and I buried him near the river. So when he came back and we addressed it, oh, he was ready to kill me. He tore the phone off the wall, you know, wouldn't let me and the boys get out of the house. I'm not really sure how it all came down with him taking a silver briefcase out of the office and, you know, booking it down the street. Because I'd called the police by that point, you know, because I can't remember. We had a different phone that I got to. But anyway, I had been listening to these Tony Robbins tapes, right? That were really building me up, really building me up. Before I lived in the condo in Saratoga Springs. I was in Pleasant Grove. And Star Maker knew where, I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure how they would get a hold of my address, but, oh, I know how, because of the location. Somehow they were able through the app to get in my locations on, which should have no connection to its separate app. Like if your location is on for your phone, your normal location is on, you can still go on an app without having your address show up. But I was doing a post and I posted, and then I went back and looked and my address. How did they get my address? I mean, I didn't put my address in there, and it was exposed all over the app, you know. So after back forward. After this mastermind thing, I was just getting constantly bombarded with this unstoppable, you know, let's go to the unstoppable thing, okay? I went through like about 3-4 weeks without, you know, a place yet, because I didn't want to lose my dogs. And even though I had papers for my dogs, it was still hard. Believe it or not, it's still hard, even with papers on your dogs, to find places to live, to lease, you know, that, you know, when you have free pets, you know, and none of them, I wasn't willing to sacrifice any of them. I love them so dearly. There was just no way. And so, but it got to the point where it was just too much. The abuse at Brenda's house was way too much. That's a totally another chapter. And so, and I didn't even know that they were sneaking around doing stuff while I was living at Brenda's house in Pleasant Grove. And I even told the Pleasant Grove police that I was missing mail from there. And anyway, so I went these few weeks, right? And then all of a sudden, a few weeks where I was kind of camping in the truck, I would go to my son's and shower and wash clothes or sleep there sometimes. But, you know, pretty much I just figured I'm just going to camp for a few weeks until I found a place, which I did. And you guys know the rest of the story, that I went to Saratoga Springs and all the bull crap that happened there. But anyway, when I went to this Unstoppable, and I realized it was about homeless people, that they were rehabilitating. And I was watching it. And Kev, Intuitive Kev, you know, during the time that I was in the condo, telling me he could see what I was putting in my bath water. They could see me. And, you know, I would do a certain thing and an ad would come. But Kev told me, you know, like, well, we can see, you know, we can see what you're putting in your bath water. They could see me. I never signed a contract with the Unstoppable crew. And this is the perverted thing about it, okay? Because before it got to that point, they had already had a copycat of me. I took a picture of, I don't know if she's the copycat, but she might be. You know, I took a picture of the copycat. She told on herself when I was talking to Estrella. So I took a picture of her, and she had, you know, really light hair. She was, you know, her thing was to come off looking like me. And they used this tape that Kent gave us of when we were married. And so, because of the level of influencer that Tony is, and the whole gig was to, I mean, he was going to get, what, my house and the land or something? Was that the deal, I think, Tony? But anyway, so the whole idea with this MK was to try to get me just to kill myself, because they needed me to die from metastatic breast cancer, and I thought I was going to die too. I really did. Nobody told me I wasn't going to die. I thought so too. I thought it was just a miracle, and it is, that I was even still alive. But these people were just like counting seconds waiting for that. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And I knew, because they kept inviting me over and over and over again on my feed to go to this Unstoppable thing. And I watched it. And I knew they had these parlor lights put in. Now, maybe the police did that in Saratoga Springs. I don't know. But somebody put parlor lights in, because I had come out and said I'd had a download about the church. And I had said, you know, I think it was after Marcella came to talk to me. And I said something about it, I think, on Facebook. And so they decided to make a joke out of me, because I had admitted, hey, you know, something's going on. You know, Happy Valley isn't real. Something's wrong here, you know, with the church. And I can't remember exactly. I'll have to look up that post. But so they decided to make fun of me by putting parlor lights in my bathroom. And it's like, you know, like a ghost making it flicker. And I'd get up there and I'd take the light bulbs out, and I would look in the hole and see, you know, if the trick light thing was behind there. And I think I was talking to Mermaid once or something, or listening to her thingy, and I was saying, like, do you see these? I was showing her, do you see these light bulbs flashing? Because she was on a live. And sometimes it would go 1, 2 lights, and they would go like, you know, it's like, man, those spirits are really working up a storm tonight. And at first you kind of like, are you kidding me, right? But it didn't take too long to figure out, you know, somebody was playing a prank. So, and you know, I did things, and Robin, the girl that was living at the condo, her and her friend, you know, she's, you know, I'm sure she doesn't mind. She's a lesbian. She has a girlfriend that was there all the time. And, you know, they were kind of snarky all the time. They had their own life and their own friends. And so it was really kind of an odd mix that she was put, you know what I mean? It wasn't a good match. But anyway, so, and then the missing keys. They'd taken my keys. And then the landlord comes back when to put in a doorknob, and all of a sudden my keys miraculously show up again. You know, it was like in a place where absolutely I know they were not. You know, and I, you know, anyway, she said, you know, well, we have a right to make sure that everything's fine here, and since you're not breaking the law, it's like, you know, because I was saying you have cameras in here, and she admitted it. And she had also admitted, you know, about the mail too. And then she would backtrack, but she'd already told me. So I didn't, and then of course, you know, they put like a tracker on the truck. So when I went to go do a video, it was easy for Bluffdale to come by and get my car. I wasn't receiving my mail from the DMV, so I didn't know that my registration had been revoked because I was just barely making ends meet. They knew that. And so I had let my insurance lapse. And so, but I didn't even get the message because I could have fixed the problem. But they didn't want me to do that. So they kept back my mail from the DMV, put a tracker on the truck. Bluffdale police took the truck, okay? So I ended up going in to talk to Judge Mickelson. And he was like, well, we just don't want you to break the law. You know, it's like as if I was really breaking the law. You know? And at the time, you know, if so much was going on. And, you know, if your life is going to end and you feel like, you know, you just want to enjoy it, you're going to sing, you're going to have a few beers. You know, I didn't think anything of it. I just wanted to be happy. I didn't care what anybody thought. And life was just too, you know, it was hard. It was really hard for a long time. They made sure it was really hard. So they get more pictures of me getting in the bathtub or getting undressed in private moments. Anything to embarrass, blackmail if necessary, whatever they could. And used his influence to send this worldwide, to get everybody involved. Because I was still alive and they had money to collect. Yeah. I think at the time too, the Trump campaign was about fixing the homeless problem. Fixing the homeless problem and rehabilitating people in prison. And you knew what was coming with that one. And then all this Bible pushing stuff, right? Have you really heard the president, talk about the Bible and Christians at all since he's been president? I don't think he has. It was a campaign strategy. This whole thing. Unstoppable. We're going to help the homeless. And we're going to take Treva's money and we're going to give it to these people and these people and these people. And we're going to kill her. We're going to embarrass her so bad that she's going to want to be dead. That was the plan. She was the celebrity sacrifice. So they could steal an inheritance. Now, it's my understanding that there's no due process for these crimes in this country, right? I beg to differ. Of course there are. There is due process. There is still, today, a Constitution of the United States of America. And my rights have been so significantly violated. Oh, they got lots of people on the bandwagon. Oh, we've got all kinds of money. We're just going to throw all y'all some money. Make sure she's gone. I'm pretty sure all of this rings a bell. Oh, and stopping the disability, saying that I was lying about having cancer. And my family, of course they know I had cancer. They all knew I had cancer. I knew I wasn't lying. You can't just get disability for nothing. Fake psychological diagnoses. You know, I don't even feel like I don't even need to bring it up. I won't worry about that one thing. It's so laughable. It's so further incriminating. But it's not incriminating me to stand here and tell you that I know exactly what you did and taking away, you know, and it's really funny too, Tony, wanting me to Get a job, okay? Because you investigating a crime, I even told the president about this too, because they're sending me these, very personal actually, tests for like campaign. You think that they're just basic texts, right? Please donate for this cause and this cause and this cause. But you know what? It's kind of getting, they knew, they were getting the message. Okay, one way or the other, they knew, as I was texting back in detail what was going on, sending pictures, telling them about Star Maker, telling them about what I knew was going on at Star Maker, that I'd been watching them for a long time. And what was going on YouTube? The people that were involved. I was really thinking that he wanted to make America great again. Me excited to go to the polls and vote for him to make America great again. Begging him and the DOJ to come and help me. Telling them. But of course they probably already knew. I am Treva Vaile, also known as Pompeii. My maiden name is Richardson. I thought that I was the daughter of George and Myrna Richardson. I was born Treva Vaile Richardson. And I told them, gosh, probably way before my boys were born. I didn't feel like Verda was the right name for me. I had an Aunt Verda. And I just told them, it just didn't feel right. It never felt right. So I turned the letters around from Verda to Treva, a long time ago. So, and then my middle name's Vaile. That I use for my surname. It's my legal name too. And I was divorced from Patrick. My name is Treva Vaile legally. There's not going to be that many people that have Vaile as their last name spelt the way that I spell it. And my dad made it up. It's made up. he made up the name. So, and in fact, he even said, when you grow up, you can use Vaile as your stage name. Even he knew as a kid I was going to be famous. He knew. He was kind of planning on it. He didn't want me to, but he kind of knew I was going to go there. If anybody had a chance to hear me. When I was 14, and in South Carolina, my dad had an agent come and list all of us. And I was 14, we were still in the sticks, like in Montmorency or something. Still hadn't found the house in Aiken, but we were in South Carolina. And the agent wanted me and didn't want my dad or my sister, and so I think that really bugged him a lot. But I got a chance to travel with band and sing professionally. I've been in a couple of bands along the way. Written songs. I heard somebody stole one of my songs. Can't wait to find out about that one. And that the music and some of the covers I've made, that you guys have been making money off my back. Created porn video for the dark web. There was no holes barred, baby. You just went all over the place, all out, all of you, and used your celebrity, your influencing capabilities. People with all the money in the world to do whatever they wanted to destroy another person. That's what they did. President Trump, I deserve due process. I think that even you can agree that I think I have endured enough at the hands of you people, and that I really do deserve that, and that I'm innocent of any crimes. I am not as racy and worldly as most of you people are here. And you might be able to try to fabricate, even use AI to create false evidence about me. But I guarantee you, I will never be like you people. I never have been like you people have been, even on my worst day. And I don't mind reminding you of that whenever you think that you have anything left to blackmail me for. You don't. You've done it all. There's really nothing left for you to do. You can't hurt me any more than you already have. There's nothing left that you can do to me. I'm free of you. I don't belong to you. I belong to God. I belong to me. I belong to me. It's my life. It's my life and my dreams and my inheritance that God intended for me. And He gave me these gifts. They're not yours. He chose to give them to me for a reason, because He knew what you were going to do. And that somehow He was going to make me strong enough to stand up to what you've done and insist that the world sees what you did. And there's no way in God's green earth that you're going to be able to hide or pretend like it's not true, because everybody here, there's too many people involved, and too many people know exactly what you all have done. They already know. Everybody knows. It's not a secret. You sex trafficked me. You targeted me. You human trafficked me. You did your little MK Ultra so that you would want me to end my own life, so that you could get away with fraud, theft, with RICO crimes. That's what you all did. And so what I was going to say is that when somehow Elon or whoever decided to stop my disability check, right? So that way, even though Tony was saying, well, she has to get a job. She has to prove that she's worth shit, right? She's got to go get a job. But they took away my money. So even if I wanted to get on somebody's program, they knew I had no money to buy a program. So no matter what I did, there was no way out of the maze, right? I would fail. Okay? That was the plan. Okay? So everybody would think, oh, she's not trying, she's lazy, she's not doing anything. And this whole time, I haven't been lazy. I've been had a straight connect to the Most High God and some very gifted spirit team that somehow are able to communicate with me. And I give them real live mental telepathy, for real. There's no question about it. That I have a divine spirit team that knows what everybody was doing and channeled with me. And I know when someone's lying to me. I know when someone's fake. Now, I owe it to myself to stand here and tell you these truths, to give you my testimony. And I know there's more, but I think this is a lot to tell. You went too far. And you may have broken my heart, but my heart will heal. But you haven't broken me. You have never broken me or my spirit. And I know that God came to help me, because He was not having what you people were doing to me. He was not about to go along with it. And He could see it. Why else do you think that He would speak to me like this? You have disgusted and disappointed Him. And you should know it, down to your bones. You should know what you've done. And He is offended, even more than me. You have a burden to carry. Many of you do. You've got a burden to carry. I'll be okay. I'll forgive and forget. Well, maybe I will never forget. And I'm working through this. But some of you just can't get away with it. And nor should you. But I will leave that to the law of the land. And I'll be watching for that. Because we still live in the United States of America. And I'm still a citizen of this country. President Trump, I am. And I have just as much right to my own money as anyone has the right to their own money. And I'm here to do exactly what I'm doing right this minute. Tell the truth. And I have every intention to continue telling the truth. You have my word.